Uhuru.
Uhuru, comrade.
Uhuru, Mariah, how you doing?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
I'm all right this fine Monday afternoon. It's a little bit wispy, but it's nice. It's cool. The skies are clear, at least here in Alexandria, Virginia. You
Oh,
know,
well, that's all we can ask for. So, hey, yeah, we're back another Monday. You know what time it is. You guys come on in, come on in, come on in. It is Monday. You know what time it is.
yep. Monday's not always fun, but you get to listen to an Africa worldview, so it's at least a little bit fun.
We make it
You got something to look forward
fun.
to. On a Monday. So that's right. Come on in. We saw some of y'all commenting before we even started the show. So Uhuru, let us know where you're tuning in from. We out here.
Yeah, let's get it.
Come on in. The water's just fine. The water's just fine. You know how they be on the road, they be talking all smooth. You are now tuned into
You are now
WXYZ broadcasting live from the airwaves of San Diego. Water's fine.
That is it right here on your airways. We see you coming on in. Tell your friends, share,
Right, that's
let them
right.
know it's that time of the week.
hmm Well, I don't know about you, comrade, but I'm ready to start the show.
Let's get into it.
Woo. Uhuru, Uhuru. I am Solyana. I am the managing editor for The Burning Spirit, which is the longest running Black Power newspaper.
You heard I'm Dr. Mariah, promotions coordinator for Black Power 96.3 FM, radio based in St. Petersburg, Florida, but available worldwide through the Black Power 96 mobile app. And you are once again tuned in to the One Africa Worldview podcast, bringing you the African internationalist analysis on the day's top headlines. And if you can't get enough of our show, you can remember that One Africa Worldview airs on Black Power 96 Radio every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern.
That's absolutely right. So go ahead and download the app, subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble so you never miss an episode. And beginning this season, the One Africa Worldview podcast will be available on Apple, Spotify, Audible, and any other means through which you get your podcast. So tap in. And of course, thank you for joining us last week for our season 3 premiere. I know that show was hot, and we're going to continue it hot.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are back with this all new season, sparing no colonizer with our cutting analysis and coverage, y'all. So, today is no different. While the colonial capitalist system prepares for their season of gluttonous consumerism, as if they're not already bleeding the people economically, y'all, we won't let them distract the people with this jingle bells and whistles that they like to do. There is no more business as usual. We're going to keep forcing the critical colonial question to the surface and keep bringing that up. And we want to organize to overturn this parasitic relationship, y'all.
That's absolutely right. So you'll see, in this episode, we're engaging in an un-Thanksgiving where we will discuss the reality of the U.S. as a settler colony founded on rape, theft, and genocide and maintained that same way. So when we examine the different political questions in the world today, we use this understanding to establish the context for things like the ICE raids or the National Guard deployment in Black communities, coupled with the mass incarceration rate and theft of Black children through things like child protective services, right? Heavy quotes on protective. And the contradictions that we see and experience today have their origin in a colonial mode of production, and the colonizer, right, the settler, white people, we see them panicking because the global social system that they've constructed for themselves on our backs is under serious stress. And so they also face the reality of an inevitable population decline, which we'll get into a little bit later. And all of this informs why ICE agents are tearing babies out of the arms of their mothers, or why the colonial state is increasing its presence and operations in Black communities throughout the country, right? It has all of its connection under that colonial system.
Yeah. Yeah, and we just don't want you to take our word for it, y'all. When you see these MAGA thumpers and these fence-striving liberals here, you're just really looking at the colonizer attempting to respond to what's really going on. And this is that real crisis that we keep talking about. And this is that crisis that threatens their present existence as rulers of this world's people and resources. And that's all they're familiar with. And their own data reveals just as much when it comes to that. Wow.
Yeah, and thank you so much for raising that. And just to go through some of that data, right? According to the latest data from the last U.S. Census, which was in 2024, it was found that the white population decreased by 0.1%. Now, this doesn't necessarily, sound, significant, but 0.1% decline has meant that, for example, between like 2022 and 2023, the non-Hispanic white population decreased by 461,000 people. That's like almost 500,000. And this trend has continued up until 2024. And so by the year 2045, it's expected that the white population inside the US will fall below 50%, right? They will no longer be able to claim majority. And researchers are, crediting this to a decrease in birth rate, as well as more deaths than births, and then an aging population, and then some people just getting, waiting to have kids, or just having less kids. And this, of course, has caused panic and Bloody Mary among the colonizer population, especially because this isn't just a trend here, but in Europe as well. And even there, because of the rise of anti-immigration, they might not have ICE agents, but they're definitely not trying to, invite immigrants out there either. Researchers there are looking at what this would mean for a population that is also having fewer kids, right? And so this explains why the colonial ruling class would sort of reinvigorate case law around abortions, right? While to feminists, this has been summed up as a consequence of the, quote unquote patriarchy, when really the reality is that the white ruling class is literally fighting for its life, right? And the perpetuation of its own life. And so what's revealing in all of this is the crisis, right? And the panic of the colonizer population, because their grip on a world where they have, again, fallaciously claimed to be the majority to even begin with is slipping, right? They're having to come to terms with the fact that the future of the world is not the one they will inherit and exploit as they have for centuries. Like, those days are over, and it's on the horizon, right? So because of this, you see the sort of deepening assaults on Indigenous and African people here, right? The ICE raids, which are still happening. We still have the National Guard walking around DC. I was just there yesterday, and they were out there, comrade. They were out there looking all menacing, assaulting delivery drivers and essentially racially profiling people, right? To meet this insane quota of like 3,000 arrests a day, which is what Trump sort of like promised during his campaign, and like what he just, wants the goal to be, like 3,000 people a day, which again is just a madness to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, just pure madness when it comes to it. And really what it is just a real profound contradiction. And it's just really showing them that it's a crisis. It's a crisis for them. And just these settler Europeans fleeing this feudalism, the poverty, disease, just all this, the starvation. They came to this land. They really decimated and just really some cases wiped out all the indigenous people, and just that whole population gone. Then kidnapped Africans and brought us here against our will to develop and just really build on this land that what did they do? They stole. So just for centuries, they have been able to just really enjoy all this freedom, this democracy through our subjugation, and by essentially disappearing who indigenous people to concentration camps called reservations. So they just really stole half of Mexico at gunpoint and pushed all of the Mexican indigenous people behind an artificial border that they declared that they couldn't cross over into their own land, their own land, y'all. And this is something that the colonizer replicated in different parts of the world. Even we see it happening all over, including over in South Africa. It's happening in Australia, New Zealand, India, and just recently the most glaring example of this is in Palestine, currently occupied by the illegitimate settler state of Israel. So this is just what we must understand, because you have people that can condemn what's happening to Palestine and can even say Palestine should be free, but they can't seem to wrap their brains around the fact that the same process of liberating the land and the people of Americas is also a prerequisite for a future without genocide, oppression, and exploitation. And we see that happening all the time. The U.S. is the original settler colony, the original, and is the blueprint when it comes to this, despite the distortions of history that try to articulate something otherwise to us. But we know. So yeah, just on November the 25th, we can look here and see that Erroll Musk, the father to billionaire Elon Musk, made headlines after starting in a media appearance, y'all, stating in this media appearance that the United States is doomed. That's his exact words, doomed or will go down if the white people become the minority. And this is just a demographic shift that's predicted to happen. We're seeing and hearing within the next 20 years. So let's take a look at that video.
The big concern at the moment, and why I think South Africa is a big talking point in the US right now, is America in the next 20 years will become, for the first time in its history, a minority white country.
Well, that will be a very, very bad thing to happen. You want to see the US go down? Why? Oh, you don't like cars and electric cars, and you don't like technology, or what is it? You want to go back to the jungle, or?
If the US becomes a minority white country.
Yes.
So there's Latinas, there's blacks, there's people from all different races make up the majority, and then, it could be 48% white people. Do you really think the US is doomed if it goes under?
Yes, it goes under then.
Seriously?
Yes, of course. You see, if you take South Africa, we have a small white population that projects European culture, or what we learned from Europe.
And oppressed millions of black people.
No.
For decades.
How do you oppress? We gave them work, we fed them. They grew from a tiny little group into a massive group. That's not oppression, that's feeding them. Do you understand? You only grow big if you get fed. You only start at 800 and become 50 million if you get fed. We fed them, for crying out loud. Enough with this nonsense.
But so you understand, because the black population was so oppressed under apartheid.
Well, we never saw this oppression you're talking about.
You never saw it.
No, I never saw it.
Yeah, because you're white.
Yeah, let's pause on that. You saw that, the jungle, y'all. That fool sat up there and said the jungle and that they're doomed. Yeah.
You say you don't like cars. That's crazy.
So yeah, this wasn't just some random internet comment by no means. This is really deliberate. And we see these white nationalist declaration that this sitting here made on this global platform by this whole wealthy, influential settler based out of where? South Africa, nonetheless, in a country with its own brutal legacy of this colonialism and this apartheid. So this is what the colonizer truly believes about its own significance, despite the fact that it relies on Africans and others to live. So yeah, I think it's really important to note that recently the US President Donald Trump put a limit to how many refugees could actually come into the US and is prioritizing settlers from occupied Tanzania or South Africa. So they are claiming there's a white genocide going on, and despite the fact that the settler population owns something like 80% or so of hospitals land, while the majority of African workers live under harsh conditions. They are so forced to be in this labor and live in these areas with frequent electricity outages, toxic dump sites, and just so much more stuff going on there. So that is actual genocide. And of course, they're reporting that the white people are in danger, and part to justify any aggression on behalf of the colonial powers against our Africa. And just back to this Musk here. He made these comments while comparing the U.S. to South Africa, the United States to South Africa, expressing fear that if white people lose numerical dominance in America, it will collapse. So let's be clear, what this Erroll Musk fool is mourning is not democracy. It's white power, y'all. And this is the panic of a colonial class watching their whole grip slip away, y'all. And Errol Musk, he's not alone when it comes to this. We know that from Trump's whole crazy rhetoric, we hear over and over and over that rhetoric to use the rise of this whole great replacement theory that they're using, that word, great replacement theory. These kinds of statements are becoming just more common, more and more. So here's what's really important to understand when it comes to this, y'all. When colonizers say the country will fall apart without them, they are really admitting something super critical here. They are admitting that everything that they built, it really rests on domination and not equality. So that the very stability of this whole system that depends on the continued exploitation of African and colonized people. So they don't fear collapse because of immigration or any of this other shit that they say. They fear the collapse because oppressed people are waking up. And let's not forget the irony here. This whole Errol Musk fool is a settler over in South Africa. And the same South Africa where African people were brutalized, we were dehumanized and stripped of our land and resources under what? That white settler rule. So when he says America will go down if white people become the minority, what he's really saying is that the world is becoming ungovernable. For the colonizer, that is. So, and to that, we must say it should be. That's the way it's supposed to be. So, because if a system only functions through this theft, violence, and white domination, then yes, that system needs to fail. And African people aren't afraid of that future at all. We're building it. We're organizing for it, y'all. And we're claiming that power on our own terms.
Oh, that's absolutely right. Thank you so much for that. I felt like an invigorating speech, comrade, with your inflection. So I appreciate you taking us through that. And you know, I just want to shout out the folks in the comments as well. You know, laying it out there. We had a comment from the Movement Entertainment 5424 tuning in from occupied Azania, aka South Africa. They took all our land, killed Africans to build this entity called South Africa. Like, that's the reality of it. And you have fools like Errol Musk, like you said, comrade, just completely being ahistorical and denying the reality of what South Africa actually is. He's really out here saying we fed them. We fed them. Where is this oppression? I haven't seen this oppression. That's your claim. That's your counter argument to the reality of this colonial system. That's you know, and that just reveals the reality of it. And I also appreciate Virginia, who also said the only future for white people is in solidarity with African liberation and the liberation of all colonized people. And that's absolutely right. So I just wanted to shout out you know, our viewers for laying it down, you know. And I want to add, you know, that this crisis is also reflected in the move towards war on Venezuela by the U.S. government, right? This isn't just a war on us, it's a war on all colonized people, you know, and the U.S. government is currently screaming war on drugs, right? And we've heard that before. We've heard that before against Black people inside the U.S., right? And we recognize Venezuela as part of the indigenous land that was attacked by colonizer Europeans, right? And we unite with the indigenous understanding that from, you know, from Alaska to the very tip of Chile, that this land belongs to them, right? And those forces who have dared to fight back, preventing the U.S. from accomplishing all of its goals for theft and domination, they're being targeted and punished. But the Venezuelan people remain ready to defend the revolution, right? And this is not to say that the U.S. will not carry out a major military attack against Venezuela beyond the over 70 extrajudicial killings the U.S. has carried out in Venezuela waters, right, near Trinidad and Tobago. Like, we learned that U.S. ships were spotted doing military exercises near Trinidad and Tobago, and the deployment of U.S. troops is sort of geared for a land invasion of Venezuela. But it seems for now the U.S. has sort of returned to waging mostly psychological warfare, right, which is just as deadly. And it's important for us to see the situation with Venezuela in the context of an unstable, frightened colonizer population, right, a dying social system that presupposed endless access to the world's resources for the colonizer, right? The attacks on Venezuela are part of this settler-colonial project that was again initiated by Europe in the 1400s, right? It goes back to that. And we always have to talk about this colonial attack every time we see what's going on in this world. And we actually have Chairman Amaj Jatella, right, talking about settler colonialism and the need to stand with the people of Venezuela. So we have a clip for that, and this clip is from our November 13 webinar entitled "Hands Off Venezuela." So let's go ahead and take a look at that.
Recognize that, and I think it's also important for us to recognize that America itself is a settler colony, and much of what we're looking at in the world is a world that has been created by settler colonialism. When you look at all of the Americas, you're talking about, and not just the Americas, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, settler colonies, and they've become extraordinarily wealthy as a consequence of what they've taken from those whom they've colonized and the lands that they have stolen. But the other thing that is important to recognize is that when you have a settler colonialism, there's no respect for the land. There's no respect for the territory. They have no history, no relationship to it. The Venezuelans do. The indigenous people in the concentration camps that they call Indian reservations have a relationship. They're for generations, going back more longer than what America has existed, more than what many of the European states, most of the European states have existed. There's a relationship to the land. There's a relationship to the animals on the land, to everything on the land. But since there is no relationship, by the settlers, they destroy it all, kill the buffaloes, destroy the environment. It doesn't matter because they have no history with it. So they're settlers with no respect for the land and the people. And they can't have respect for the people because the existence of the people actually constitute evidence of the crime of colonialism. And so to have the people there is to be a manifestation of a criminal society. And I call it criminal society, and it's a misnomer because it's not a crime what they have done to us, because the colonizer makes the law and says what is crime and what is not crime. So it's not a crime in that sense, because colonialism itself is illegitimate. So the colonizer makes the law, but the system is illegitimate. So they make laws that oppress and kill people and make war on a regular basis. And I just think it's really important for us to acknowledge that, and to acknowledge also that America is a settler colony. Yes. There's no redeeming qualities that you can find here. And so we're looking at a society, a global society that has its immediate origin in the theft of the land and resources of the people, slavery, genocide, and what have you. And its existence is based on what it steals from other peoples, other lands, other countries. And sometimes if you have like a settler colony in the United States, you have an internal colony on top of that. Same thing is true in New Zealand, Australia, you have internal colonies within these settler colonies. And so they steal the labor, the value of the labor of the people who they have colonized inside these settler colonies, et cetera. So they have tremendous amounts of wealth that they have accrued through this process. And so every struggle for people to be free is a threat to that wealth, a threat to what they have stolen, a threat to their very existence as a settler colony. And they are extraordinarily desperate. And the thing that makes them desperate is because they have no history, no relationship to the land other than this recent period of stealing it and what have you. But they have no real enduring relationship to Europe, where they've come from. So it's like a really treacherous kind of place that they're located in that creates a tremendous amount of desperation. So most of them have no relationship to France, to England, or even to Spain, even though Spain, the Spanish colonialism, as has already been talked about, there are more people who speak Spanish outside of Spain than in Spain itself because of Spanish colonialism. Same thing is true of French. More people, and the same thing is true of English. So all of us speak English, French, Spanish, and whatever, not because we are English French or Spanish, but because those are the ones who colonized us. Those are the ones who stole everything, and sometimes they stole our names, our culture, and everything that we've got. So you have a situation where you have, we believe in the existence of a society that is comprised of an economic base. And in this world, an economic base, and in this country, it's an economic base on slavery and colonialism. And make no mistake about that. It's slavery and colonialism. I know that the fairy tales that you read that they call history, especially within the United States, makes an argument against that. But slavery and colonialism is the foundation, is the economic base of this society. And any society is comprised of an economic base. You can't have a society without an economy, without an economic base, but without a way that the society accrues what it needs to feed, clothe, and house itself, what it needs to produce and reproduce life. But along with an economic base, there is also another component that I think is really important for us to understand, and that is the superstructure. And the superstructure is the ideas. It's the institutions like legal institutions and things like that that we see. The superstructure is what creates the nigger. The superstructure is what creates the wetback. The superstructure is the thing that has come about to deny the reality, the existence, the legitimacy, the humanity of those who from whom it steals all of its resources. And that's why what you see is what should normally be a great unity between the workers of the world, if you will, workers in the United States and workers in Europe and the African and colonized peoples around the world. It doesn't exist like that. Because the real class question is concentrated in the colonial question. And it's the position that's taken on colonialism. It's unity with the colonized peoples of the world that will give identity to the true workers of the world. Because the reality is that what we're looking at now and what is happening with the U.S. and Venezuela is an attempt to hold back history. It is an attempt to lock history in this particular place. It is an attempt to prevent the future from occurring. And the future that we are looking for, the thing that makes progress in the world is for freedom, it's for liberation. And it's a future of the past, of slavery, of colonialism, and what have you. And those who are trying to hold that in place, to lock us into the place of slavery and colonialism, they will do anything necessary, anything possible to make that happen. Comrade Andreina was talking about how it's so important for us to tell the truth about Venezuela, tell the truth about Palestine. And I do believe we should use every medium that we have to do that. But more importantly, I think what we have to do is tell the truth about the United States. And the United States, even as it's talking about killing people who are supposed to be criminals in Venezuela, they have put National Guard through African communities in this country. They have had meetings with the military and the head of state of this country in the United States has talked about using the African communities in this country as training grounds for federal troops, violating even their own laws in order to do that. They're supposed to be fighting crime by putting federal troops in our communities, etc. And they have taken in St. Louis, where I'm located now, something like 2,000 acres, pushed Africans off the land to create this global, this spy center, this international geospatial spy center that controls every satellite that you see happening in the world, and all the drones that's killing people, even in Russia, killing people in various places around the world. They are putting that in African communities. They're uprooting Africans from homes and what have you to make that happen. In the name, they'll give you a job, they say, but that's a lie. Because even to get a job at this entity that they're creating, this spy center, requires one to come clean on their intelligence investigation. And I don't know an African who has not himself been imprisoned, doesn't have a relative who's been in prison, doesn't know somebody who's been in prison, doesn't live next door to somebody who's been in prison or on their way to prison. That's our reality. This is what they are telling us that we are supposed to be defending. That is to say, people who would go out and kill people in Venezuela or fight for that. So it's ridiculous. And we reject that totally. I want to respect I want to say that also a fundamental contradiction that we are looking at is the weakness of a revolutionary movement inside the United States, because it should be necessary for the United States to be so busy covering its own ass that it wouldn't have the resources and times and intent and interest and desire and time to be attacking Venezuela or any other country out there in the world. And that's part of the problem here is the fact is an unwillingness to recognize that inside the United States there are colonies, the indigenous people. And when I say indigenous, I'm talking about all of the indigenous people. I'm talking about those in the concentration camps that they call Indian reservations, those in the concentration camps that they call barrios, those in the concentration camps that they call prisons, etc. These are indigenous people whose existence actually bespeak the nature of the social system that we live with and the oppression that we all have to deal with. So finally, we have fought for many years subsequent to the military defeat of the Black Revolution of the 1960s. We have fought for many years to bring our struggle back on track, to take it from this idealized version with this assumption that what we are fighting against is the ideas in white people's heads. What we are fighting against is to make white people like us. Something to that effect. We fought that and continue to fight it every day. And the reality, of course, is that we are fighting against colonialism. We forced the colonial question back onto the agenda, even after what the U.S. was able to do with the assassinations, with the murders, with the genuine anti-colonial fighters of the 1960s, even after the incredible a movement that we saw grow out of Cuba with the Africa, Asia, Latin America front that was consolidated, USPAL, the organization that came out of that, and the tremendous amount of murders that prevented that from doing the kinds of things that we needed it to do. But we saw colonized peoples coming together to organize together. To end this relationship we have with a horrible, horrible system that gave rise to white power. And that's what it is. It called itself white power braggadociously. It called itself white power. It identified itself as white. And it characterized white as this glorious thing, as opposed to the rest of us and around the world. And the fact is, of course, that in so doing, they branded themselves. And I want to just say that we're looking at a colonial mode of production. So people are able to recognize colonial. They say inside Palestine, finally, we got them to say it's colonial question in Palestine. We've got them to say it's a colonial question in various places around the world. But what is really important for us, for Venezuela, for this whole movement, is to recognize that we're looking at colonialism as a mode of production. It is not simply a policy by a particular country. It is a mode of production. It is something that came into existence with the development of what people refer to as this whole social system. It came into existence with a process that started 600 years ago when Portugal made its incursion into Africa and began to capture Black people and disperse us around the world, creating the colonial project. So this is the first time you saw in history where there was a global economy that united the whole world in a single economy. That's where Venezuela comes from. You want to talk about how the current contradiction of Venezuela was no Venezuela before the colonial project, before the settlers stole African people and dispersed us around the world as colonized people and dropped us off in all of those places. But what they did also, when they dispersed us around the world at gunpoint, we're not like the Europeans who like to brag that they came to the United States and et cetera, looking for a better way of life and looking for a freedom, et cetera. We lost a better way of life. We lost freedom. And we've been fighting for a better way of life and for freedom ever since. And the people in Venezuela are fighting for that same better life. We are part of the same struggle, the same movement, the same blood, if you will, engaged in a struggle against white power that has been built on the backs of our oppression and the enslavement of our people, and it's time for it to end. So we just want to say that we are in profound solidarity with Venezuela and all of the oppressed peoples of the world. With the Palestinians who have been shamelessly murdered, this system has no conscience, has no shame. It kills people without shame. Murdering fisher persons in the middle of the Caribbean have no defense capacity. Raiding my home and the homes of our movement at 5 a.m. pre-dawn in the morning, threatening us with 15 years in prison for talking. This is not a powerful country where they say they will put you in prison for 15 years for talking. That's something about a fragile social system that can't stand even a discussion. That's why everybody's bugged. That's why there are cameras everywhere. So they want to make sure that you don't think the wrong thing, that you don't say the wrong thing, and the rest of that. But the people will be free. Yeah. And it's our responsibility to make that happen. And right now, Venezuela is on the front line of that struggle, and we have to do everything we can to give solidarity to Venezuela against this war being made by this merciless, shameless, most oppressive, genocidal entity that has ever been on the planet Earth. They have to go out and get jobs for themselves, go to work for themselves, and stop trying to bleed the peoples of the world for all of our resources. We want everything back. Yeah. We want reparations. We want everything back. Everything that you've taken, we want it back with interest. So that's what I need to say. And I really want to express appreciation, hands off Uhuru, to this extraordinary front that we've opened up in Latin America. And
Uhuru, wow. It's always so good to hear Chairman laying it down like that, and comrades that are tuned in. I hope you felt that. We're working on getting Comrade Mariah back, but until then, I just really want to say, like the way Chairman laid it out, I think it's so important to just really understand how these kinds of crises are not like unrelated, isolated. Okay, Dr. Kile, Uhuru. How's it going? Good to see you.
Uhuru, surprise.
I didn't know this was happening. This was not planned.
No, like to keep everybody guessing because it is season 3. So, we got to come with new punches. You know what I'm saying? So, Uhuru. Yes.
But yeah. Did you want to say something about, what we just watched on Chairman's video?
Just really want to salute the chairman's leadership. First of all, he has been pursuing this understanding for, more than 60 years now with his, just participation and contribution to the struggle for African liberation. But it obviously has expanded in terms of, the struggle for African liberation being tied to the liberation of all colonized people because of this understanding of a global colonial mode of production. So I just, the analysis here is just spot on. It's right on time. And, I just, again, really want to salute our leadership and state, again, that was an excerpt that we heard from his presentation at the Hands Off Venezuela webinar hosted by the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Fight Back Coalition. And that entire event is actually available on the Burning Spirit TV YouTube channel. So consider becoming a supporter of the Burning Spirit TV. QR code in the corner there on your screen. You can support this YouTube channel get some cool give backs like 20% off on our store, and get access to any exclusive content that goes up, and just all the time access to this incredible content, including presentations like the one we just saw. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And while we're on the topic of some of the ways that the colonial ruling class is sort of responding, right, to the growing anti-colonial struggle. Oh, we get Mariah back. Um, but yeah, the growing anti-colonial struggle that's sort of spanning the globe, right? Let's talk about their level of desperation, right? Like, how else do you explain rap artist Nicki Minaj, right, also known as Nicki Minaj, right, being identified to speak to the United Nations on behalf of Trump, right, on why the U.S. should be able to intervene in Nigeria on their claims of the religious persecution of Christians, right? Let's take a moment to unpack this, as they say on the interwebs, right? And I won't lie, like, it does hurt a little bit, right? I mean, a lot of us have been a Nicki Minaj fan for years, watching her rise, celebrating her wins, defending her when it made sense, some folks are still with Nicki as, she celebrated her birthday out in Vegas, but this latest stunt has gotten, it's something. And barbs everywhere are sort of throwing their pink wigs in the garage, saying it's over. Because she recently made headlines right after publicly aligning herself with Donald Trump. Yes, the same Trump whose administration has pushed policies that devastated the Caribbean, including her own birthplace of Trinidad and Tobago, right? We're talking about a man whose government sent armed drug boats to patrol Trinidad's waters without warning or consent, undermining the sovereignty of the country Nicki claims to represent. And let's also not ignore the sort of sudden focus on Nigerian Christianity, right? All that really means is these colonizers have found new resources in Nigeria that they want to control, right? And Nicki is sort of helping them do it by playing this puppet for their agenda. And again, also not to mention the absurdity of the white genocide in South Africa that we are hearing as well, right? And as well as the fierce resistance of the Sahel states. Let's not forget to mention that. And this is all clearly a move that's orchestrated by the colonial powers to, again, tighten its hold on our Africa and our resources, which again are slipping out of their hands by the day, right? If you haven't picked up a theme of the show yet, it's the crisis, right? And so seeing Nicki posing as a Trump fangirl, right, on some like he's the real one energy, it's not just disappointing, it's quite dangerous because again, while Trump and his mega cult are selling white nationalism and empire preservation, Nicki's lending her a massive platform to help them recruit, right? So let's just go ahead and call it what it is. It's sort of celebrity confusion weaponized by colonial politics. At best, celebrity confusion, right? And let's also be clear: no celebrity should be looked at as political leadership, especially not what Chairman Omali is out here, right? Especially when Director Akile is out here, like especially those who clearly represent class interests that are opposed to our own as African workers, right? And Nicki Minaj has a history of just questionable and contradictory political positions, but even then, she has no relationship to revolutionary or anti-colonial politics whatsoever. She's never attempted to express a position that supports the struggle for African freedom. So her representation at the UN should just be taken definitely with less than a grain of salt, but it does reveal how the colonial ruling class was sort of grasping at straws as it is, right? And Minaj, like Barack Obama, has aligned her interests with the African petty bourgeoisie, that prioritizes their own limited access to power at our expense, right? They're even grasping up at more straws. So her position sort of claims no accountability to the people. Nicki has a massive platform. So when she uses it to validate someone like Trump, it just sends the message that African people's oppression is negotiable, right? But we're on one Africa worldview. Let's be clear. Tis not. It is not. Not in Trinidad, not in Nigeria, not anywhere. We've been dispersed, and the headlines are giving MAGA Barbie. The people are giving revolutionary clarity, right? And this sort of carrying on doesn't work on us, Nicki. So just wanted to put the message out there.
Yes. I mean, very embarrassing. Like just very cringe also.
Yeah.
Yuck. begging for colonizer crumbs was not on the bingo card in 2025. And there have been a lot of things on the bingo card. And under colonialism, I guess you just kind of have to leave that thing wide open because anything, is nothing's off the table. But like you said, this is obviously like a desperate, dying colonialism. And I can say with utmost certainty that Minaj is most definitely not for the culture, which is, obviously a segment that we do hear often. And, when we just look at activities like this, it's just very clear that this person, like as you stated, has aligned themselves with a particular class interest against, the African Revolution, against the struggle to free African people. And this notion about like the Christians, I just want to also just attach that to the whole the white nationalist, like I gotta be mindful of my language, but the dream, the white nationalist dream, everything that comes together, including like the Christians. So the Christians are being attacked, persecuted, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's that relationship there because Trump is concerned with Africans, a sector of the African population, being killed. I mean, knowing the whole history of the U.S. And first of all, how the U.S. is behind, what's happening in places like Sudan and the Congo, in various places throughout Africa where there's like a genocide happening against Africans, and so suddenly there's some consideration about Africans in Nigeria who, they say claim to identify as Christians. So the Christians are being persecuted. Everybody else can go to hell, get whacked off, everything, So, but that's how we know this is bogus too. Like it's just as bogus as an explanation about drugs coming in from Venezuela, right? It's just these things that are being used as a basis for setting up these attacks. And I just think it's so important to like see this relationship too of like what was mentioned, the Africans rising up in the Sahel states, and what's happening with South Africa, like throughout the whole African continent is roiling, and all these contradictions and things are bubbling to the surface. And so and we this whole episode, you guys have been talking about how white power is losing its grip, quite literally in the fact that it is a declining population, and so it's not going to be able to manage very soon just this the theft, the whole system of born of the theft of our resources. And so while they recognize that their whole future, just as their past, is linked to Africa, the fact is that they're going to be unable to control it. So these are obvious maneuvers to try to tighten that grip, to be able to say, let's send the military in, we have all these bases in Africa anyway. So I just and I don't even know how clear Minaj is about, any of that, and if whether it even matters if she's clear or not, because again, she's a long time ago, I should say, made her interests very clear, long time ago. So it's like somebody said, it's not surprising, that she would allow herself to be used as a vessel, as Christians might say.
As a vessel is hilarious. But yeah, I think it's so real. And I think we should take these moments as just like, not like, oh dang, like I didn't see this coming, but like this is a moment that sort of clarifies a lot of things for us, right? We always talked about on the show, like how, a lot of things the colonial system is being exposed. Like it's not necessarily this like hush hush thing anymore, right? Like they're not faking it the way the liberals might have, the way that they might have when a democratic, president is in power. Like it's just bold-faced, it's in your face, and we like at this point it's just disingenuous to look for other explanations. And so ultimately a system that at its basis allows and creates the means for like an extraction process, whether it be in human labor or natural resources, right, that keeps one part of the world rich, and a specific population of the world rich, like out of their minds, right? We're hearing about Elon Musk potentially being a trillionaire, while African colonized people are literally robbed and stripped of the ability to self-determine. Like that's the system that needs to go. And that's the system that will continually call out and put into context every time we see these little things, right? They don't happen in isolation. So I just appreciate you putting that into context. And, we've spoken so much about the contradictions embedded in the colonial mode of production, right? So it's time now to tell the people, how we can be part of transforming the world to create a better, just future with a free, independent, and socialist Africa, right? Freedom for the indigenous and colonized people of the world, right? You want to take us through a little bit of that?
Yes. I'm so excited to talk about this, and I know that some of this was highlighted in last week's episode, but we get to talk about the incredible work of Uhuru Pies, who launched their annual holiday pie sales campaign, and for the first time has brought the campaign to St. Louis with the launch of the Uhuru Bakery and Cafe. And just quick little snippet background there. I mean, this is part of the Black Power blueprint, these incredible institutions, anti-colonial economic projects that has really transformed literally the conditions of poverty, oppression, and exploitation, gentrification on the ground in Northside St. Louis, which is, the heart of the African community. And, in this area before the Uhuru movement touched down, it's just dilapidated buildings that the city government allowed to rot. There, and just in terms of like just the real just abandonment of that community, and the Uhuru movement came in and has just really revitalized and brought the people into the process. And this bakery and cafe is so important too because it is located in a place that's characterized as a food desert, but the city government fought the the building of this bakery and cafe, so had no other solution for the people to bring in resources and bring in healthy fresh foods and establishments that the Africans would be able to ordinarily be able to obtain that. But they're going to attack the one institution that's coming in and taking responsibility to provide it for the community. So I just wanted to say that despite a year-long battle with the city to get the permits, just get a permit to open up the bakery and cafe, that the Black Power blueprint, the team in the office of the deputy chair were successful. The community was successful in getting that open and established. So now the holiday pie sales are happening right there in St. Louis, out of the bakery and cafe. And this is really powerful when you realize that it's not simply about a delicious pie, and the pies are delicious. Okay. But this is about self-determination and setting the foundation for an independent African economy. And, this institution has a history. It didn't just pop up, but, from the African People's Socialist Party selling cookies at Grateful Dead concerts to food stands, raising resources for the Free Desi Woods campaign. This is all in the 1970s, 1980s. Putting up these these food stands to raise money for the Free Desi Woods campaign. And then Uhuru Foods and Pies across decades has been building economic power in our own hands, and which has also meant the power of food production and distribution. And just like that really has to set in, for us in terms of our understanding, because it's more than just, resources coming in through pie sales, but it's the power of food production and distribution. This is really important because under the colonial mode of production, as the chairman has pointed out, Africans have been forced to produce and reproduce life for the colonizer, which also includes growing the food, preparing the food, teaching how to preserve the food, just to turn around and then not have access to the food that we've produced. And so, like the chairman points out, our fridges on the north side of St. Louis are empty because the fridges in the south side, white community, are full. There's that parasitic relationship that we're talking about. And so we're producing the value of the labor to produce the food, as well as the value of the food itself, is constantly robbed from Africans, making it near impossible to produce and reproduce life for both us and the colonizer. We got to, under this social system, we have to choose, and the choice is always we have to produce life for the colonizer. And with the Uhuru Pies, though, we are seeing in real time what it looks like to seize the means of production. And this is why we have to salute the brilliant work and leadership of Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Shatella, who leads the economic work of the Uhuru movement. And that includes the exciting Uhuru Pies campaign and the work of Uhuru Pies. And you can see like pictures and videos and stuff of the pie campaign right now. You'll see the deputy chair like out there on tables, like selling the pies, as well as just leading this whole institution. And, the work of Uhuru Pies, it involves the local and global communities. They take in volunteers, they work with local businesses and farmers for ingredient sourcing, and with the Bakery Cafe in St. Louis, as well as the coming Uhuru Farm and our community garden, we'll be able to grow and utilize our own ingredients for the pies and other menu items. So supporting the work of Uhuru Pies is an active way that we can organize to destroy the colonial mode of production, right? So again, more than just a delicious pie. It is a tool. It is a weapon. Just like the tool you'll use to slice that pie up, the pie itself is a weapon. So purchasing a pie, volunteering in person or remotely, or even donating establishes your stake in this struggle. So you're not simply a customer, you're a comrade in this process, and you can join the fight with every bite, and if you have plans with the family this week and you're in one of the locations for the pies, make sure to be the one bringing the hit dish, okay? Like,
Right.
if you talk about dishes, you got to make sure they leave talking real good about yours, okay?
Really. Or that lady on TikTok or something where she does
Yes.
reviews and sends you to prison.
That's wrong. Like,
You'll
okay,
be sent from her
right,
if you
you're
get
good.
this.
You'll be good.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you so much for taking us through that, because it just shows you, like, it's not literally just about pies, right? It's literally about owning the not just the means to produce, but every step of that process, which is what African self-determination is. And Uhuru Pies is just such a beautiful example of that. And, as the title of the show, right? Speaking of an Thanksgiving, right after this colonial day of being greedy and not too thankful at all, comes up Black Friday, right? As Black Friday takes over headlines this week, we're again seeing calls for African people to boycott major retailers. And while that energy is real, we kind of do have to ask, as we do, like, what's the plan, right? To what end are we boycotting? Because time after time, just has happened in the past, we're told not to shop at Target or whatever other place we happen to be mad at. But too often these boycotts are reactionary or sort of scattered and without a revolutionary economic strategy behind them, so they end up kind of falling flat, right? And a boycott without a blueprint just means silence, right? It's not power. There's no redistribution or ownership. There's no transformation. But the good news is that we do have a blueprint, right? And it's right here in our hands. Institutions that serve our own community, like Director Clay just went over Uhuru Pies, right? It shows that it's not just a bakery, right? It's a model of self-determination. Every pie sold supports the programs of the Black Power Blueprint, which is building housing, community centers, gardens, and economic infrastructure in the hands of the African working class. This is super different from fundraising. This is building, contending power that powers our struggle and the world that we want to build, in the revolution. And that's what doing it for ourselves actually looks like, right? Not waiting on corporations to change or begging for a seat at a table or a piece of their pie, right? But baking our own damn pie and serving it to our people. So yes, question the system. Yes, resist capitalist greed, but don't stop at saying no, right? Start building the yes that belongs to us. So, later this season, we'll talk about real financial literacy more in depth, sorry, not from, banks, not from stockbrokers, but, from our own revolutionary African educators who are teaching our people, how to build, how to grow, and protect our collective means to get to African determination and that self-determination. And that's what the party is actively doing now, right? Because we understand that economic power without political power is just hustle, and we're not hustling. We're building liberation. So just wanted to say that.
Yes. See, capitalism will create hustlers, right? We're looking for long-term, independent, socialist economy. That's what we're, working to build. You can't do that by, hustling, right? So, because hustling is about survival, you know what I'm saying? And we're trying to get out of a mode of just simply living to survive. But, like being able to, as we're saying, like have the power to feed, clothe, and house ourselves and not to worry about where all that stuff has to come from, that we have access to that and we can live dignified lives. That's what we're after. So, we're saying you can boycott. You can say you ain't going to the businesses, yeah, do that. But we say boycott and buy Black power. Support the institutions that are advancing this anti-colonial strategy and putting power in your hands and in the hands of the African community worldwide. So, a whole mouthful, pun fully intended, has been stated this this show. But just like that second to go plate, it's time to wrap up this episode of the One Africa Worldview. And before we do that, we do have some announcements for other events, actions, and activities that you can participate in to advance the struggle for Black power and self-determination. So on the burningspear.com/events calendar, we have from now until Thursday, November 27th, Uhuru Pies baked fresh at Uhuru Bakery Cafe. You can order their sweet potato, their pecan, the pumpkin, the mixed berry, apple crumb, chocolate bourbon pecan, or vegan sweet potato. They are looking for volunteers to help bake, promote, or sell pies. And you can also support the Black Power Blueprint programs, bringing economic development and healthy food to Northside St. Louis. For more information and to order pies or volunteer, you can visit uhurupies.org. That website is also on the screen. That's uhurupies.org. Or you can give them a call at 800-578-5157. That's 800-578-5157. And then we have coming up, very excited, on Saturday, November 29th, Burning Spear Media presents the film showing They Say Cut Back, We Say Payback, How Reparations Became a Household Word, y'all. And that is, again, November 29th. This viewing of the never before seen footage from the historic First Tribunal on Reparations organized by the African People's Socialist Party in New York in 1982. This viewing will be followed by an interview with Uhuru Movement leader and APSP Chairman Omali Ishitella, who served as the People's Advocate at the tribunal. Also on the program will be African People's Solidarity Committee Chair Penny Hess. This event is organized by Burning Spear Media, custodian of a rich store of video, audio, photographic, and print materials documenting the history of the Black Power struggle as seen through the activities of the Uhuru Movement over the past 50 years. The time is set for 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Tickets are on sale now at theburningspear.com/film showing. Again, you don't want to miss this. This is never before seen footage from the Reparations Tribunal. So, so yeah, for more events and everything else going on, you can visit theburningspear.com/events calendar. And of course, we'll be keeping you updated here on One Africa Worldview. So make sure you subscribe on any of the socials that we are on, and make sure you're locked in and following us everywhere.
Oh, that's absolutely right. Thank you so much, Director Akile, for those announcements. And it's about that time, y'all. It's, that's it for today's show. Hopefully, we're leaving you with some really great conversation starters for any family gathering this week. And thank you once again to all of our viewers and listeners. We got a first-time listener here, Pancho McFarland. What's up, Uhuru? And I also want to say, don't forget, right? Subscribe to our channel. Never miss an episode of the One Africa Worldview podcast, like a podcast like no other. Okay, we built different out here. And we stream on the Burning Spear TV, obviously, Burning Spear Media Rumble channels, Beep 96, Pepper 96 FM, based in St. Pete, Florida, and also streaming globally on the Black Power 96 FM app. So until next time, One Africa,
One Nation.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.